looked at the gut microbiome profile over the past 100 years or so, they found the diversity of the microbiome is going down every decade.
Okay.
That is a huge problem.
Dr. Mathialagan is a consultant physician and gastroenterologist with over 25 years of experience. He graduated from the University of Jaffna in Sri Lanka and later trained in the UK, specializing in gastroenterology and general internal medicine. His research at Hammersmith University focused on Helicobacter pylori. Dr. Mathialagan has been heavily involved in medical education, serving as clinical subdean for the University of Cambridge, undergraduate student lead for the University of East Anglia, and medical director of education at Queen Elizabeth Hospital. He is a censor for the Royal College of Physicians in London and chairs the MRCP UK exams, both locally and internationally. His clinical interests include luminal disorders, irritable bowel syndrome, gastroesophageal reflux disorders, inflammatory bowel disease, and the gut microbiome. He continues to work part-time while staying active in the medical education and lifestyle medicine.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, I've got a very special video for you guys. I've got Dr. Mathialagan with me, consultant physician and gastroenterologist from Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Kings Lynn, Norfolk. I'm very, very excited for this video because I actually met Marty not too long ago, about a couple of months ago. I obviously worked as a physiotherapist in the hospital for 2 years and a couple of months, and at the later end of my of me working in the hospital, I started to see Marty quite a lot. I would be seeing him walking through the hallways, and he caught my attention because he would grab onto me and he would be like, John, train me. I want to get fit and healthy. I want to gain a little bit of muscle. And he was persistent, and I eventually actually started training Marty when I started doing coaching, and it was one of my first few clients, and he's come a long way since then, and we've formed a relationship from that. So today I thought it would be very good to speak to him because of his background. He is a doctor, and there is a lot that he can give in terms of the knowledge and education, nutrition, gut health, and so on. So I'm very, very interested, and I'm very excited for this podcast. So, Doctor, how are you?
I'm good, John. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this new thing that you are planning to do. Obviously, it's a good thing. I agree with you about what you said. It's always good to share information, and that would be useful to anyone who wants to get some information on that.
Yeah, 100%. Honestly, like, this is probably, obviously, you guys have seen the channel. I've done a few podcasts before, but I'm very, very excited for this one because I feel like a lot of people will actually gain a lot of knowledge from this. So let's just start off a little bit, Doctor. Let's go back to where it all began. So you're from Sri Lanka, okay? So tell me a little bit about your upbringing in Sri Lanka and what actually made you go towards the route of becoming a doctor.
Yeah, I grew up in northern part of Sri Lanka, which is in up north. So we grew up in a small village. My parents, both of them were teachers. So as you can imagine, that it is quite a very an interesting household to grow up. But fortunately, we had a good balance. My dad was fairly strict. My mom was a bit more understanding and flexible. So we had the best of both worlds.
Okay.
And
yin and yang.
Yeah, and I remember my parents were saying that I should do medicine. I didn't question it. I just carried on what they said. And but eventually, I remember asking my mother why they thought that I should do medicine. And she said, I probably had a bit more patience compared to my siblings growing up. And I'm glad I did medicine. In fact, it's probably one of the good things that I went into. I really enjoy it. And I'm sure that my parents made the right choice for me.
Yes, 100%. Honestly, just from my perspective, knowing you are very calm. You're very nice and collected. You never really raise your voice or get angry or get annoyed. And I think that's a very good character trait for a doctor. Just from working in the hospital, the best doctors are the ones that are very calm, relaxed, patient, and calculated. So that's really good. So what actually made you want to go through the route of becoming a gastroenterologist? What particularly drew you towards that line?
Yeah, when I was a medical student, I wanted to be a physician. As you know, that there are separate specific specialties that you can go into. You can become a surgeon, or you can become a physician, you can become a pediatrician, or you can become a gynecologist. So depending on everyone's interest. So I thought from year 3 in medical college that I wanted to be a physician, because those are the people who I worked with. I thought much more inspiring, and that they were quite good teachers. So I got really interested in what they had to say and how they taught and their work ethics. But when regards to gastroenterology, I would say it's more of a serendipity, because I happen to work with my consultant colleague in Colombo, which is the capital of Sri Lanka, where that I worked with one of the few pioneers in Sri Lanka, gastroenterologist. So he got me into this, and obviously I thought that is a very good specialty to get into for a number of reasons. One is that, medicine is always you have a long career. You want to find something that will keep you interested, that will keep you also useful in what you do. And I find gastroenterology gives you a sort of best balance of both seeing patients and talking to them, and also doing some procedures like endoscopic things, which I think makes the field is much more interesting and much more involved.
Good. So I think that's very important. You need to find a balance of almost the in-depth stuff, and also the procedures, but also speaking to people, having that human touch. Because I think a lot of doctors, that is why they go into it, speak to people to help people. So I'm glad that you found that. What would you say is the main thing that's kind of gave you the longevity to have that passion? Is that something that you feel like is innate, or is that something that you feel like due to just the way a gastroenterologist course / career is planned out that has kept you engaged? Because you are very passionate about it. Even during your birthday, I said this before, you still working, you're always talking about it. Every time I ask you a question, you kind of go on a massive talk, and you can see the passion that comes out of you. So where do you think that comes from?
I think in medicine, John, I find that it is a continuous learning. Medicine is expanding and advancing across every aspect of medicine, whether you take the gastroenterology, our field, or any other field. Is a continuous learning process. What we knew 10, 15 years ago is no longer true. So there's lots of new information, new research coming. So I think to be on top of what you practice, to make sure that you are doing the right thing, that you need to be up to date with what's happening in your world. But so that is come with anyone who is involved in medicine in our level, at the consultant level. I think a lot of people will have the continuous learning process. So that keep you going. I also find that what keep me going, you're right, I'm interested and I like the work and talking to people, colleagues, and helping them. And it's very rewarding and satisfying. And I think if I able to help patients or colleagues or people who I work with, and that comes with the professional satisfaction. I think that is a good thing about medicine. You help people, and that actually makes you happy too. And I think that is probably one of the things that I find keep me interested.
100%. I definitely can understand that from being a physiotherapist myself. It's very strange, because you feel like people ask you, what's the secret to happiness? Well, how do you attain joy? What keeps you happy? And honestly, I get my most happiness when I help other people. Like when I see other people improving, there's a certain feeling that you get when someone comes back to you and they're like, oh, John, my knee's gotten better. I can walk a little bit further. I'm doing a lot better. It gives you that sense of satisfaction. And I think that's very important. If you can have service towards other people and give service towards other people, you're going to get a sense of satisfaction. So I completely understand that. And especially with the line of what you're doing, it's high pressure, high stakes, difficult procedures, so that must give you even more. So now I understand that.
Absolutely.
So what actually does a gastroenterologist do then? Like what is a gastroenterologist's role?
Gastroenterology, when we talk about gastroenterology, that involves the system, digestive system, involving nutrition and digestion. So we divide into two main parts. One we call a luminal or hollow organs, which is originating from the mouth up to the anus. And then you have a solid gastroenterology, which is involving with the liver and the pancreas. So the digestive is the main function, and where that when you take some food, when it goes to the stomach and it's get digested and then absorbed, and that is all part of the luminal gastroenterology part. And I would say this gastroenterology, not only it is an important function, but it also the second largest network outside the brain of neurons. It is they call it the second brain because lots of neurological connection, neurons and the neurotransmitters and the chemicals plays an important part in the gastric function.
Okay.
And
you made that distinction earlier on with the luminal and the solids. What type do you practice?
Yeah, my main interest is luminal, and that is probably, I would say, one of the commonest reasons the patients are referred for specialist opinion. That is, amongst the gastroenterological disorders, there are some of the commonest problem that you would see in your day-to-day practice.
Good. So, a lot of people, I think, have stomach problems in terms of IBS. Some people have intolerances that feel they can eat. It's very, very diverse in terms of the presentation in the normal population. How important is digestive health for overall fitness and well-being? In your practice, what have you seen and how important is it? What can you say on that?
Yeah, I think if we look at the gut, the microbiome is probably the hottest topic in nutrition now. And the scientists are trying to manipulate and map out our microbial friends in the gut. And one of the most significant discoveries as of late is the huge role that the gut microbiome plays in the rest of our health. In fact, people say that the 3 pounds of microbiome that we carry around in our body is more important than every single gene that we have in our genome. So it has been now shown to be a very important player in gut health.
Okay. 3 pounds of microbiome. Just out of curiosity, is that like a standard measurement, or is there like a variety? Is there like a range in different people?
Yeah. We have got trillions of bacteria, virus, fungi, protists and pastes in our gut. So gut has got a huge number of organisms. And if you try and get all the organisms, if you measure it, they think it's about 3 pounds. So that's what I meant. The large gut has got gut microbiome that would collectively weigh about 3 pounds.
Okay. And just speaking of the microbiome, how does a balanced gut microbiome contribute, would you say, to general well-being?
But the gut microbiome, people now understood it is the main driver of our immune system and our digestion. That is no doubt about that. Has been proven to be very helpful. And it also linked to a wide variety of benefit, both physical and mental. For example, people say that when you have certain diet, and that tend to have a anti-inflammatory effect, and that tend to promote your physical health and also mental health. It tend to release the cytokines and the hormones and the chemicals that tend to help with your mood as well. So it has a huge role to play. In fact, if you look at the history of the gut microbiome, the scientists have identified that.
Can I just pause you quickly? Just to give a little bit of context. Just explain quickly what the microbiome actually is. Just to create a little bit of understanding.
So if you look at the luminal part of the gastroenterology, we have the esophagus or gullet, we call it, about 35 to 40 centimeter in length, and that goes and joins the stomach. Then we have got 6 meters of small bowel which is hanging in our tummy, and then it joins with the large bowel where the appendix and the cecum is. So the large bowel is about 60 to 70 centimeter in length, and that contains the bacteria, what we call a gut microbiome that we're now referring to. As I mentioned, those large bowel gut microbiome consist of trillions of bacteria, virus, fungi, and protists, so various types. They all play a part.
Okay.
That is what collectively called gut. In fact, they say the gut health relies on three foundational principles. One is the healthy gut microbiome, that we can talk about what is healthy microbiome. And the other one is a good balanced diet, and then regular exercise. All three are the main foundational elements of a good gut health.
Okay. And in terms of what someone can eat to improve their gut microbiome, what sort of foods should people eat more of, and what sort of foods should people stay away from to improve their gut microbiome?
Yeah. I think that the general rule of thumb is, John, it is what you need is a good balanced diet. That is what we should be aiming for. And when it comes to advice about diet, there is no hard and fast rule I don't recommend. I think it is a more individualized, it's an intuitive area.
Yeah.
We should be talking to people about their likes and don't likes and get a balanced diet for that particular individual. It can vary, but as long as the theme is that we maintain 1/3 of the diet come from carbohydrate, 1/3 come from the fat, and 1/3 come from the protein. That is the general. A good balanced diet. Certainly there are things that we need to make sure that we have supplements and things. And also I think is important, John, perhaps if I may add on to that, there are a lot of myths and misconception about this gut microbiome, because there are a lot of things written about it, people hear about it, people talk about it. So people think this gut health or gut microbiome involves various shakes, smoothies, supplements, strange detox regime, and then endless meditation or some challenging yoga pose. No, they're not. It's all about everything in moderation. And you enjoy what you like, and then good balanced and healthy nutrition, and make moderate general changes, moderate changes gradually. Any drastic change in the diet and try and lose weight for a short term, I find in my experience, the patients I see, it is very difficult to sustain and maintain long term. So we need to make sure that whatever the diet pattern that we recommend, it should be easily accessible, it is available, and it is something that they can maintain long term. That should be the key message. So I think it's important that we don't we emphasize the fact that lots of myths and misconception about what the gut microbiome is.
Okay. Yeah, with the internet, it's very easy to spread misconceptions, and people will just run with it. It's hard to tell facts from fiction nowadays.
Absolutely.
So I think you're 100% right. I guess if someone is thinking, how can I improve my gut microbiome? How do I find out if I've got a bad microbiome? How do I find out if I've got a good microbiome? Maybe the person's a little bit anxious. Maybe the person's got irregular bowel habits. What are the steps they can take to, one, know if they've got a good microbiome, but also what are the steps they can take to improve it as well?
True. I think that's a good question. So if you can now profile your gut microbiome, you have to send a poo sample to a laboratory, and they will be able to analyze your poo sample in terms of the bacteria and the virus and the fungi that contain. So there are some bacteria and the fungus and the virus which are good, and they will give you how much that your poo contains a good and the bad microbiome. So we all have good bacteria and bad bacteria. So we need to see how we can improve our gut microbiome profile. But it's also interesting to say what they have found in the British subject, the gut microbiome is unhealthy and it is less diverse. So, we talk about the diversity, as you know, John, is a very important but a very buzzword. We talk about diversity of opinions, diversity of people, ideas, and diversity of suggestions. But they also found the most diverse microbiome that you have in the gut is more healthier one. And then people find if you have a wide spectrum of microbiome, they tend to be lean as well. And they found the people who carry too much weight, which, as you know, it is an increasing problem and obesity in Western world and probably throughout the world now. And they found there's a 70% difference between the gut microbiome of someone who is lean body mass and someone who carries too much weight. So it's a very important aspect, and that has been proven, and there's a lot of growing evidence to support that.
Okay. So weight has a lot to do with it. 70% is quite a big, significant number.
Yeah. I wanted to make one point. I think, John, we mentioned, but we probably couldn't complete that. So when people looked at the gut microbiome profile over the past 100 years or so, they found the diversity of the microbiome is going down every decade.
Okay.
That is a huge problem. And they think, the scientists think, that perhaps the main contributor to the modern epidemic of certain diseases, for example, obesity and diabetes, some autoimmune condition, some allergic conditions like eczema and the asthma, they think, and the peanut allergy, and a lot of other allergic conditions that we know, people think could be relating to the decline in the gut microbiome over the past 100 years. And also that how that we can improve the gut microbiome, it's something that people now these days talk about a lot to try and make it much more relevant to the patients that in front of you.
So you said there's been a massive decline over the last decades.
Yes.
What are the main reasons for that, do you think?
I think perhaps, as you know, the modern life these days, people have got fast food, and we have got already partly cooked food, ultra-processed meat we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
So people those days, cooked meal, they talking from the raw grain and everything. But now we have got refined cereals, refined sugar, refined
processed.
Rice.
Yeah.
So it's more processed. So that is no doubt. That is probably one of the reasons. It's interesting. Another point to make is that we talked about 1 in 3 of us in the UK carry too much weight, and that is increasing now. They say it's probably about 40% of the UK adults are overweight. And at any particular point, 1/5 of the population in the UK will be on some form of diet.
Yeah.
What the studies have shown, every decade we continue to expand our waistline by 1 inch. So though we are on a diet, generally overall our obesity rate is going up. So certainly the diet is not helping. So there is more to it. So that is what I think is important, that people pay attention to the gut microbiome. And now people say when you go and look at the menu on a restaurant, you will not be looking at the calorie content of the menu. You will be looking at the microbiome index of that particular food, because that's what really matters. You could have a good balanced diet with good calories, and the microbiome can change the way that you feel, how much you eat, how much you metabolize, your satiety, which is that when you think that you have eaten enough, the microbiome has changed your behavior. The good microbiome will make you maintain that the good health. It's a very interesting area.
Just touching on that quickly, it can change the way that you feel, the way that you behave.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think you refer to it as almost like the second brain, because it's controlling everything because of the, I believe you've mentioned it before, the brain gut axis.
Correct.
Just from your personal experience, how significant of changes have you seen in terms of someone who had a bad gut microbiome profile to someone who improved it, in terms of energy level, mental state, and so on? Just anecdotally speaking, like, what have you found in practice?
True. That's a very good question. There are a couple of patients I can think of, but coming to the main point is that, so there are, as I mentioned, the gut is an important part of the immune system and metabolism and digestion.
Yeah.
So what happens is the diet that we have, they can influence what we call, if you have an inflammatory diet, the diet tend to increase the inflammation. That will have a harmful effect on the body. Whereas the diet that has got less inflammation, that tend to release the cytokines, the hormones, happy hormones, like serotonin and dopamine, that tend to improve the mood. So we call it psychobiotics, the diet that improve your mental health.
Okay.
And the physical health as well.
Okay.
So, we talk about the probiotics where you can have a good bacteria is already there in bio yogurt, what you buy over the counter, any supermarket, that can be helpful. And then the probiotics is where that you have a healthy diet that tend to promote good bacterial growth.
Yeah.
For example, we know banana, garlic, onions, and asparagus, and the vegetables, they tend to promote good bacterial growth. Whereas they find if you have a more animal protein, they tend to promote the not so healthy bacterial flora, but also they release substances called ammonia and sulfide when it's metabolized. When you have a high protein diet, when it is metabolized in the intestine, it also releases some beneficial substance like short chain fatty acid is supposed to be a very beneficial one.
Okay.
Equally, you also get harmful one like ammonia and sulfide that can cause problem, inflammation in the heart and the other areas.
Okay. This is very interesting. Obviously, I think there's a lot of people that swear by just high protein diets and just a lot of meat.
Yes.
And they're absolutely fine. And they live their lives with no issues. Some people that literally just eat steak. There's people out there. And there's actually been some anecdotal evidence and cases where there's a guy called Jordan Peterson, and he had a lot of immunosuppressant. He had an immunosuppressant condition, was going through a lot of difficulties, and he changed his diet to just purely meat, and he actually found that improved his condition. So, what do you attribute to that particular instance and cases like that? We'll answer that first.
Yeah. So that is true. There are some individual conditions that may have influence, but in general, as I mentioned, that our body is not designed to deal with a type of diet that is unnatural.
Okay.
So if you look at our ancestors, whether you come from European ancestry or Asian or African ancestry, we grew up in a certain type of diet. For example, in Asia and in Africa, people tend to eat more fiber diet and so more healthier diet. Whereas in the European, over the years, things have changed. So my advice is that whatever the diet we follow, it has to be natural and it has to be maintained and sustained. You're right. People go on a very high protein ketogenic diet, they lose weight. That is true. It is a very good way of losing weight. But equally, that you are also releasing high amount of ammonia and sulfide, they tend to produce inflammation. And also you are increasing the workload of the kidneys and the liver to metabolize that excessive protein content. So over a period of 5-10 years, and on the long term, that particular diet is not going to be healthy. Because remember, from the age of 30, our organs will start showing wear and tear damage. Every organ, heart, the lungs, the kidney, and the liver, they will show every decade, 3 to 5% of the function of our major organs will show a sort of wear and tear damage. That's a natural sort of history of our human biology if you look at it. So it can be helpful, those diets people have lost weight, but in my experience, I find that it is not sustainable and it is unnatural.
Yeah, of course. I guess exceptions don't disprove the rule. There's always going to be variation, but for the most, the best advice I can give people is to follow the proven scientifically methods. So you mentioned earlier on that the diversity of the gut microbiome is reducing. Every decade, by the yearly and every decade. What do you think we're going to get to if that continues? Like, what is the end result if we continue to become less diverse as we as time goes on?
True. I think that's a good question, John, because interestingly, we were focusing on a different thing. People now talk about how we can treat the condition, but we need to look at how we can prevent. So, one of the father of medicine, Hippocrates, said 2000 years ago, he said, all disease begins in the gut.
Yeah.
The modern medicine or the science is only trying to catch up with this early prediction.
Yeah.
So we now know gut, as I mentioned before, plays a very important part in health and disease, the gut microbiome. If we look at the 6 leading causes of death in the world, obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, fatty liver, insulin resistance, dementia, and ischemic heart disease, and various cancers. They are the leading causes of death throughout the world.
Yeah.
But largely, they are not caused by genes. They are caused by environment, our dietary choice, and our lifestyle.
Okay.
So you can modify your diet, you can modify your lifestyle. For example, smoking is probably one of the things that's been well described as a detrimental to everything, dementia, the heart disease, and the various cancers. So if you stop smoking, you will improve your health. Similarly, there are a lot of other things that we can focus on the diet and the gut microbiome and the exercise. By modifying those lifestyles, we can make certainly good changes, those leading causes of death.
Okay.
So that is an interesting point to think about, how we have come to that level, because the dementia and the stroke and the heart disease are diseases of the modern civilization, because that we have become less active, more sedentary life. Our diet has changed hugely. We heavily rely on fast food diet. We don't exercise. We play games inside, play all the youngsters. So this is all that is true. I think at least now people are beginning to realize that we have to understand to try and prevent the disease rather than treating it.
Yes, 100%. I think it's just very easy to order some pizza or order some fast food nowadays. Like, it's very accessible. People don't really, most of the time you go out, you won't even see the amount of calories in what you're buying, because there's so much junk, extra processed stuff in it. And I think it is a societal problem. What do you, bottom line, like, if you were to make a change, if you were in charge, and you had to make a change that is going to significantly improve, the gut microbiome and gut health of the population, what would be that one change that you would do to cause a big domino effect and improve everything?
I think it is difficult, but first thing is it's understanding, John. I think it's important that people need to get the message that what is causing the problem. So then if we can stick to very basic principles, that good lifestyle choices and good balanced diet. And also, I know that eating is an essential part of life, and it is a major enjoyment in life. So that's one of the 3 enjoyments that we have. So we don't want to restrict people enjoyment, what they like. What if a bit of understanding, bit of discipline, and bit of knowledge, I think you can have a healthy and happy balance and well-being. So it's need a bit, I think education is important, the knowledge is important, and they need to understand these changes will make you feel happy. And there's no doubt. There's a lot of research, growing evidence now coming out, and people are talking about it. And that is a good thing, like what you are doing now to reach out people, to inform them, and then they can make changes. Because, I see patients coming to see me, and their main diet is 3 liters of Coke. I know it is true, because people get used to it and they get addicted to it. And it is that we need to try and make those changes. And before it become too late.
It's quite concerning though, because I think it's very difficult for people to make change, especially when it's related to food. You can give someone the option to have a Coca-Cola, or something that's a bit healthier, like, I don't know, green tea. most people are going to go for the Coca-Cola because it's the sugar. They know it's bad for them,
True.
but they will still take it.
Yeah.
So it's difficult to find a balance between just educate, because we already know a lot of people. Maybe you can put it in people's faces more, and also legislation, making things like hard and fast. But I guess that's above our pay grade to make those decisions.
But you're right, that is very true. But the way the food industry or the tobacco industry makes it, people become more addictive to that because they play on the how people get addicted. So if you look at the Coke, is a very famous people talked about. In each can of Coke there are about 8 teaspoons of sugar, lot of salt, and that is when people get used to it. You're right. They get withdrawal symptoms like any other thing that we are addicted to. And it's sometimes people do really need a lot of reassurance and constant information to make sure. But that's what you need. You need patience, you need discipline, and you need more practice.
Okay.
And those are the main things. But they're not easy because otherwise it would be, things could be changed overnight. I think the information, the reassurance, and the constant. But 3 things: good diet, exercise, and good sleep will really recharge you, and you're ready, and you will be a much more, healthier and much more happier person. There's no doubt about that.
Of course. I feel like there's so much you can touch into here. I've got a lot of notes here. So, but we'll just quickly touch on just now when you said about the sugar content in the Coke, and there's a lot of salt as well.
Yeah.
Can you just go into a little bit more detail what it is about those two, sugar and salt, that causes the addiction? And can you just go in a little bit into that?
Yeah. I'm not too sure exactly which part of the thing that tend to make you more addicted to those either high salt or high sugar or nicotine. But it's probably all controlled. But as I mentioned, the brain, the chemical, the axis. And that is where I think, people have managed to try and reduce the nicotine content with the nicotine patches and try and make it more gradually. That can be successful. With regards to, I guess, the sugar and the salt content, people now say zero Coke or no sugar Coke. That is a bit controversial now, because some people say, yes, you are taking less calories. That is better than having a regular Coke.
Yeah.
But what they have looked at is those sweeteners that they have, they find that affects the gut microbiome profile adversely. Those saccharines or the sugar. So that is another piece of information. People say, though the calorie is less, but the effect on the body is an ongoing problem.
Solve one problem, you have a host of other problems, because you have to replace it with something, otherwise no one's going to buy it.
Yes.
You have to replace it with something, and that's kind of almost addictive in a way as well.
Yeah.
Moving back a little bit, we mentioned about supplements earlier on.
Yeah.
What are some key supplements in terms of probiotics, in case someone doesn't have obviously standard would be, or the best route would be to clean up your diet, eat a balanced diet.
Correct.
But in terms of supplementation, what is something someone can pick off the shelf and have maybe 1 or 2 a day to improve their gut microbiome?
True. I think I would say any bio yogurt that you buy from supermarket is good. So you don't have to go for an expensive one. Any bio yogurt, which if you can read it, it will say that it contains the gut bacteria, lactobacillus or bifidium. There are a number of things that they will write, and those are helpful. And they are not particularly expensive. You can buy it over the counter. But there are other things people talk about, number of varieties. So that is the first thing to say. And it also comes in sachet. You can buy those probiotics, and then you can have it. In fact, it's interesting. When people go on holiday to tropical countries, people do say, make sure that you take some probiotics that can help you to prevent what we call a tropical sprue or gastroenteritis. People say it is beneficial. I haven't had any problem with that, but I think, it's something that is there. The other thing is that when you eat, you need to have a diversity of food. So which means you eat plant, you eat fish, you need meat, and then you also have the nuts. And so you eat variety of food. That is where I think is important.
So food is the main thing. Don't have supplements are important, but food is just try your best to fix your food, and that's the best way.
True. If you have a good balanced diet, fruits and vegetables and animal protein and vegetable protein and the fat and carbohydrate, you don't need supplements. But you can. But if you think that you want, I know people take supplements, but sometimes we have to be careful. The supplements itself can be harmful. I have come across patients who've been on a very high dose of vitamin D, and that increased the calcium level, and they develop kidney failure. I have had a couple of patients, remember during the COVID time.
How high, may I ask?
So a young guy who was taking about 10,000 units of vitamin D over a period of 1-2 months. And when he came in, his calcium level was high and his kidney function is almost completely failed. So, and vitamin A, vitamin D also can cause this intoxication or if you take more than what you need. So everything in moderation, that's what is important. Because during the COVID time, people felt vitamin D deficiency was a risk factor. So people started taking vitamin D left and right. But people
I every now and again, I take vitamin D.
People are more select, but I think it is true. Asians tend to have a low vitamin D because of the skin. I think the brown and the dark skin are less productive when it comes to producing vitamin D. You need probably 20% more exposure. But if you have a good balanced diet, you don't need supplements. But having the multivitamin supplements in regularly to make sure that you check those levels, I think it's not a bad idea, but it's not essential.
Okay, got it. What are some of the most common conditions that you see in practice?
So,
especially in the younger population.
I think I would say the gastroesophageal reflux disease, or what we call an acid reflux disease, which is probably affect 1/3 of the population at any time, which is very common. But those are benign conditions. They come with remission and relapses. So sometimes you might eat something that make your symptoms worse, and some days that you are fine without any problem. And also the anxiety and the stress also can play a part in those symptoms.
Acid reflux disease. Just explain exactly what that is.
Because people will say that when I eat in something, I get a bit of burning pain in my chest. When I go to sleep, I wake up with some chest pain. Those are due to acid reflux getting into the gullet. So it's very common. There are a treatment. You can modify your diet. You identify the things that makes it worse, and your symptoms are better. So that is, as I mentioned, 1/3 of the people do suffer from it. And some people do suffer from badly, and most of us will have these symptoms when you have overdone certain things, and you take some medication that goes away. The other condition that we have common is the ulcer disease. Also, people can develop gastric ulcer or duodenal ulcer disease, which is due to excessive acid and the stress, and people not having regular diet. You can have an acid-induced damage in the stomach and in the small bowel, causing ulcers. Interestingly, in mid-80s, that people identified those ulcer disease is related to an infection due to a bacteria called Helicobacter pylori, which revolutionized the treatment when it was identified. So much so, it was a major discovery in gastroenterology, and now people who describe that condition were given a Nobel Prize because it is a major discovery for me in GI field. So that is the other condition, ulcer disease. And the third common condition, I would say, probably irritable bowel syndrome. It's very common. As I mentioned, again, a lot of people do suffer from it from various degree. Some people it's minor, it doesn't affect their lifestyle, they get on with their life normally. Some people it's so bad, it does really affect their day-to-day life and what they're doing. And those type of patients are difficult. And the main thing is that we want to make sure that we have looked into other causes of bowel problems. For example, we don't want to miss there is any inflammation in the bowel, like inflammatory bowel disease, or whether there is anything that causing the symptom. Once we have excluded that no identifiable cause that this particular patient has got irritable bowel syndrome, then I find talking to them and explaining to them, taking time to explain to them what we think is causing the symptoms. We talked about the brain-gut axis. The brain controls the gut through the neuronal connection, some chemicals, and also some neurotransmitters. And then we trying to modify that path, how we can try and make their symptoms better. That varies depending on their symptoms. Some people have a constipation predominant IBS where they don't open the bowel. Some people open their bowel once in 3 to 5 days. Some people have 3 to 5 times a day. So there's a spectrum.
Yeah.
So, but both are sensitive bowel. So our plan is to make sure that we talk to them, understand them, look at their dietary habit, and make small, sensible, moderate changes. Very often that majority of the people will improve. But when we still have problems, there are a lot of other options that we can do. I tend to refer to our well-being clinic run by dietitians, and it works well. They have got huge expertise, and they can talk to them and monitor them, have a diary to try and advise them, and it works well.
Okay.
And people have tried other measures like hypnotherapy and biofeedback mechanism that also can be useful in some patients.
Really?
Yeah.
Having hypnotherapy?
It's been in some hospital, it's offered as a part of the NHS treatment. We don't have it in Kingsley, but in some centers they do have.
What are your opinions on that?
It works because we talked about, John, that the brain-gut axis is one of the major part of it controls our bowel function.
Of course.
So by talking to people and modifying their behavior and altering the way that their brain works, and I think you can be what you call changed in terms of how you think, how you can control it. So I think it is doable. Not everyone. That's the thing. The important thing to understand, there is no single treatment or advice will work for everyone. We all different. We all, our DNA, how we wired up and how we respond to treatment, how we react to treatment, to the drug and the diet is all varies. So individualized treatment is the best, and that can be only done by talking to people, taking time to explaining them. That's what I find it works in medicine. If you tend to rush, because if you have too many people waiting to see you, there's a pressure. So I think it's important, the patient needs your time and advice. And then go through, and constant reassurance is very important. So people do get nervous, they read and they listen, they talk. So people get conflicting information, not from the doctors or medical professionals, from other social media. So I think it's important, it's our duty to make sure that they get the right, correct information.
It's very interesting because you're saying about the brain-gut axis and how, obviously we spoke about the psychobiotics earlier on. And it seems that the mind does play a massive role. So it could almost be a reflexive cycle where maybe you're anxious and then your symptoms become worse, and then your symptoms become worse, that makes you anxious. And then it's a never-ending reflexive cycle. One, do you find that quite a lot? And also, how late do some people leave it? Or how late have you found some people to not realize that some of their symptoms are actually, or they didn't realize till later on that they do have IBS, or they've got some sort of disorder that's causing them distress that was originated in the gut? Do you find that often?
True. I think that's an important question. I think this irritable bowel syndrome is a diagnosis by exclusion, which means that you have to be careful, because we find the research has shown about 10 to 15% of the people that we think may have irritable bowel syndrome ultimately find to have celiac disease.
Yep.
So we have to keep an open mind. Everyone is different. Equally, that we think that patient's symptoms are typical of irritable bowel syndrome may turn out to have some inflammatory bowel disease, which are very slowly active or mild form of some inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis. So we have a much better way of investigating them. That is what I find, that you need to keep an open mind about what you're dealing with, talk to patients, make sure that we have done the relevant test to try and exclude those causes. And then once we have done, then we can talk to patient. We think this is what you're having. And majority of the people do know that is irritable bowel syndrome, but they need some form of advice how they can control your symptoms. But small minority, I think the mind plays an important part. They are very difficult to reassure. They are convinced that they have got something serious. So they end up seeing different doctors, end up having lots of investigations. But that is a huge problem, is a pandemic on its own, John. I think, which is something which I feel very passionate about. The over-diagnosis, over-treatment, over-investigations, over-intervention is a pandemic on its own, because the medicine has become more, I would say, medico-legally people are worried about. We tend to practice more defensive medicine. You don't want to miss something, so you tend to do a lot of things. When you do things, you will find something which is not relevant, but you find something, and then tend to create more anxiety. So it's a very difficult area. And I think that is what I think, whenever this happens, you need to see a doctor who is specialized so that they can give you the right advice.
Makes a lot of sense. I think from what you're saying, it's very important that people track what they eat as well. If you feel like you've got any sort of symptoms, I think I've got mild IBS, nothing major, but I do have irritable bowel syndromes. Every now and again, I have irregular bowel habits.
Me too. I do have irritable bowel syndrome as well. It's very common.
It's very common. Like you said, yes.
Once you understand it, then you will learn to deal with it better.
Of course. 1,000%. I found out that was the same with my experience. I didn't realize till later on. I was at university actually, and then I realized actually I can't be drinking this milkshake. I can't be having this. What's going on? Then you speak to someone, you speak to a professional. They tell you to track your food habits, keep a food diary, and you start the process. I think if anyone's listening and they've got any sort of irregular bowel habits or anything like this, just keep a food diary. Keep everything nice and simple in terms of what you're eating, and like doctor said, speak to someone and start the process. Because the worst thing you want to do is get really anxious, and then it's just going to get worse and worse. And just trust the professionals as well. But yeah.
One of the other things that's interesting, I think, when you mentioned about how we can motivate people. So people even go on to say, it's interesting, rule of attraction, your compatibility, and the language of love. They say it's not depend on your stars. They think it depends on your biology and the gut microbiome. So people say if you have the right, the diverse gut microbiome, you are more relaxed, you are more empathetic, you are more happier, you can communicate well, you are more funnier. And those are
you're making me want to fix my own diet. Now I'm like, give me the asparagus.
So those are the important things they say to maintain and develop a good relationship.
That makes a lot of sense.
The people say that. But obviously, certainly there are some facts, but perhaps it's slightly overstatement, but it is true. That shows the gut microbiome is a very important part. Everyone needs to know.
No, 100%. I can agree. I think anyone, just through basic logic reasoning, when you've eaten good, like if you have a Chinese before you go to bed, I know when I've done this, the next morning you feel very groggy, you feel very tired, lethargic.
Absolutely.
You're thinking slower, you have that brain fog.
Yeah.
Conversely, if you have something very plain, maybe some lean meat, salmon.
Yeah.
Not too late before bed, maybe like 4 hours before bed. And you have maybe some vegetables with that, maybe an asparagus, like you said.
Yeah.
Maybe have some nuts.
Yeah.
The next morning, how are you going to feel?
Absolutely.
Probably going to feel quite good.
You're
okay?
right.
So it definitely plays a role, and it doesn't take too much to kind of see that. It's just implementation is always a factor, isn't it, with a lot of people? But that makes a lot of sense, okay? Let's move over to obesity, okay? So that's a massive problem in the world at the moment, obesity is, and it's a growing problem, okay? So what is the impact of obesity, and what's the correlation of obesity with gut health and overall health and fitness?
Right. So you're right, John.
We touched about it a bit earlier.
Yeah,
right?
I mentioned that nearly 40% of the British adult is carrying more weight than we should be.
Yep.
And in fact, if you look at the 20 European countries, Britain has the highest obesity rate between 15 to 19 years as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a huge problem. Obesity not only causes huge problem, it individually that you are more prone to develop diabetes, high blood pressure, insulin resistance, fatty liver, heart disease, stroke, dementia, various cancers.
Yes, it's a risk factor for a lot of things.
Yeah,
isn't it?
gastric cancers, esophageal cancers, pancreatic cancers, breast cancer,
The list
bladder
goes on.
cancer. So, and so it is a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
So we also know that if you look at the gut microbiome profile of people who are obese, their gut microbiome is 70% different from the people who have got lean body mass. We talked about it.
Yeah, we did.
But that is the research. In New Zealand, they are treating obesity with gut microbiome.
Okay.
It is, they are well ahead. And as I probably mentioned to you before, not in the podcast when we talked, our local hospital in Norfolk and Norwich is going to be starting some gut microbiome treatment for certain conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, obesity is a huge problem. We talked about, the scientists believe that declining the diversity of the microflora over the last 100 years has caused some pandemic of diabetes and obesity, autoimmune conditions and allergic conditions. They think we are on the increase because of that. So how we can tackle obesity, I think that the education plays a part. Not only the diet, regular exercise, good sleep hygiene.
Yeah.
Try and make sure that, it's interesting, the Japanese diet, and if you look at the American diet and the Japanese diet, when they say when it is full, in Japanese culture it's called harakachibu. Which
I was trying to remember it just then. I was like, what was it again? Harakachibu.
Yeah, harakachibu. What they say is you stop eating when you are 80% full. So it's difficult to know when you are 80% full because it is difficult to know. But generally they say...
Exactly 80%. Now I will stop. Yeah.
So generally they say is when you're eating, when you know that you can eat a bit more,
Okay.
that's the time that you stop eating. You said, yeah, that's enough. So that you don't... If you look at the American or European diet, when you're full, you mean that you're really full. You find it difficult to even get down.
Find more space, undo the zip. You make a bit more space.
So the Japanese culture over the years they have, and the modern science is only now catching up with the cultures have known intuitively 4,000 years ago. So yes, I think it is about the advice, the diet advice, and the right food you eat, and the other lifestyle modifications like smoking and alcohol, and good sleep hygiene, and exercise. I think very important. I think, you will know more about the exercise and the benefits, how it helps, but it's very important. So those are simple things that's doable. We talk about green space and having to work, walk, daily walking and hiking is good. The park runs are very good. So there are a lot of things that people can do it, but it's something that make those changes.
Yeah.
That is what we all have as a society responsibility to make sure the message get through.
Yeah. So I heard about this drug that people have been testing out, the Ozempic drug. That is meant to be this wonder drug. You take it and it cures all your problems. That's how you become from obese to skinny. Okay, so tell me a little bit about this drug. Like, how does it work, and how effective has it been recently in helping people who do struggle with obesity? Because I understand there's a very high rate of relapse for people that go through their weight loss journey, especially if they are obese, because it takes a lot of retraining to come out of that. So the regression, the rate of decline after following it for a long time, following a diet for a long time, is quite high. So talk to me a little bit about this drug and what are the effects and what is known about this.
I think you're right. I don't have personal experience. I don't have patients personally. I haven't treated, but this mainly been treated by our colleague called endocrinology doctors. But you're right, Ozempic, people, lot of celebrities on it. It's everywhere now. People can buy it online. It works. It works in number of ways.
Yeah.
One way it works is it modifies the way that your appetite works. So you don't feel hungry. That acts on the brain. And the second way it works is it does delay the emptying of the stomach. So if you eat something, we would expect the stomach to empty that food within a couple of hours so that you feel hungry for the next meal or even for a snack, because you have an empty stomach and you feel hungry. Whereas this particular drug delayed the emptying, so the stomach is still full. So you don't feel hungry, so you eat less. So one way of, and the second thing is also improve the insulin resistance, which we talked about, that also tend to drive some abnormal metabolism in the body. So it works in the brain, works in the gut, and works also in the way the hormonal changes. So it's a good drug, wonder drug you call it. But like everything else, John, when this been introduced, it's only recently introduced, we have got to wait. We need to wait for the test of time to see whether there are any side effects.
How recent is this drug?
I would say within the past 4 or 5 years.
Okay, so still very, very new.
Yeah, very new.
Yeah.
So we have seen, the history tell us that drugs that we thought very helpful, for example, a lot of people now on what we call an acid suppression like omeprazole or lansoprazole or esomeprazole or pantoprazole type of drug for the acid suppression.
Yeah.
We know that now can cause number of side effects. So we now say, look, unless you really need it, try and make sure limit the use of it. Similarly, any procedures that we do, initially everyone enthusiastic about it, but then we begin to realize there are some problems. So already in Ozempic, we are seeing problem.
Okay. What are the problems?
Yes. One thing people have noticed is the delaying of the gastric emptying becomes so bad, you now feeling sick.
Okay.
Because it sometimes can be irreversible, those changes. So you're trying to treat a condition, then you end up having more symptoms.
Okay.
That is one problem. The second problem is the Ozempic face you heard about, that the way it tend to reduce the fat in the face, make it probably that you are more aged and make it probably more unhealthy when looking. And the third thing, which is very recent, within the past week been reported, that people who are obese, who are diabetic, who have been on Ozempic, they tend to develop a type of blindness or poor vision due to effect on the blood supply to the eyes. And that is 4 times commoner in people who are taking Ozempic.
Okay.
So there are now we begin to see. So as I mentioned, we got to wait about 15, 20 years before we can say how safe it. But you're right. If you stop taking it, then you will gain weight.
Exactly.
So it's a temporary measure, but it works. And as I mentioned, there are a number of celebrities have said that they are on it.
Interesting. So you said that it works on basically making you less hungry. Okay?
Correct.
If you're less hungry, you eat less, you lose weight.
Yeah.
And it seems that the ability to be hungry, and if you're more hungry, you're more likely to get obese, overweight.
Correct.
So it's a massive indicator.
Correct.
Okay. What are some highly satiating foods, okay, that people can have that are low calories that you can eat to feel full, okay, and then hopefully not gain as much weight? Because usually it's the ones that you can eat loads of, like the burgers that you can just keep eating.
But that's a good point. I think that is what, when I said about when it comes to advise individual about the diet.
Everyone's different.
Yes.
Okay.
What I would suggest is, that's a very good point you mentioned. What I would suggest is, so you're eating a bulk of diet so that the stomach feel happy, and then you feel the satiety center is fulfilled, and then you stop eating.
Yeah.
So it would be helpful that you eat, if it's a volume of diet, you eat something which is less calorie rather than high calorie. If you eat refined sugar or refined grain or refined food, you will have more calories because there's got more sugar, maybe more salt, so it is more unhealthy.
Okay.
So what I would suggest is that you have let's say that you have a proportion of meat, potato and salad. So you tend to eat more salad, you try and cut down the potato and the meat part. So not completely. So you try and modify that by 1/3 to start with. So you're going to eat 1/3 less of your meat and the carbohydrate, but you are going to increase the salad and the legumes or the nuts or whatever that you have. Try and increase it. So they're helpful. They are probably less calorie, and that tend to improve your gut microbiome profile.
Okay.
Better. And then once your gut microbiome profile is better, it will control your appetite. You will not eat more than what your body, because that is how your body is modified. It is a very interesting thing how this organism change your mental and the physical health. It tend to promote good behavior, the good dietary habit. So it is just pays on. So that is where the changes that you have to make. Small, moderate, sensible changes. No major sudden changes, which doesn't work. And you will revert back, and that will be a failure.
Okay, there you go. All right, so doctor, obviously I am in the fitness space. This is a fitness channel, and I am in the bodybuilding space as well. So obviously a lot of bodybuilders have a high protein diet. Protein is very important in muscle growth and facilitating muscle growth and recovery after a hard workout. A lot of people normally take protein shakes and they have a high protein meal afterwards. What are some of the side effects or drawbacks from having a high protein diet and even steroid use as well to your gut health that you see in your practice, as well as supplementations and so on?
True. So if I just take the steroids first, and then we can go into the high protein diet.
Of course.
Steroid there's no doubt, it is very harmful to human body. In fact, we use steroids for a number of medical conditions reluctantly because they're effective. It tends to help, for example, people presenting with asthma, or people presenting with COPD worsening, or people presenting with rheumatoid arthritis, or people have got inflammatory bowel disease. We use steroids for medical reason. It works well. But in the context of increasing the muscle mass, improving the muscle bulk, steroid can be useful because it tends to increase the body mass and muscle bulk. But it comes with the significant side effects, because we know steroids can cause thinning of the bone, osteoporosis. Then it can cause blood sugar problem. It can affect the blood sugar adversely, so people can develop steroid-induced diabetes. It can also redistribute the body fat in a way what we call a steroid phases where people face become more rounded and moon face, and it also you get deposits like around the shoulder and the neck. So those some of the side, and it can increase the blood pressure.
Said deposits around the shoulder and the neck. What do you mean by deposits?
I mean fatty deposits.
Fatty deposits.
It redistribute the body composition of fat.
Okay.
So steroid, it's a bad drug for that purpose.
Okay.
So I would suggest there's no doubt steroid will cause, but people do resort for quick fix.
Yeah.
They want to develop muscle mass, they want to look like a professional bodybuilder, so they resort to lots of unhealthy lifestyle.
Okay. Just quickly, just to touch on that, doctor. Obviously, there are a lot of side effects, and a lot of people do know about. Some people do know about this. Some are a little bit more ignorant, especially in today's day and age. Everyone, it seems like, is hopping on steroids because a lot of the younger generation are very impressionable, and they see a lot of their influencers taking steroids, and a lot of people are speaking about it so openly nowadays, which on one hand is good because you educate people, okay, and you tell people of the side effects in some cases, but also is bad in the other hand because you do get a lot of these impressionable kids that will think that it's normal and they will hop on it. So there are a population of people that are very, very serious about building muscle. They want to compete. They want to become a professional bodybuilder, and they almost have to take steroids, and it's almost a given that you have to take steroids to hop on stage to achieve a certain look. For someone who has this drive in them and they want to go down this route, what are some important factors to consider, and also some important tests to take to check for organ function and markers for these sort of people? What are the key things they should be monitoring if they did want to hop over that barrier or hop over that fence of going to the route of taking steroids?
Right. Certainly, I would make sure that the blood sugar is monitored closely.
Okay.
Because as I mentioned, steroid tend to cause diabetic effect.
Okay.
People can have steroid-induced diabetes.
Okay.
So that's something. I also will make sure that they monitor the blood pressure because steroid can make you increase the blood pressure.
Okay.
So that's, you need to check those two. With regards to other effect, for example, steroid can cause what we call insomnia, where some people do find it difficult to sleep.
Okay.
And in some people, as I mentioned, we all react differently to certain drugs. I have found patients, interestingly, sometimes we give steroids for patients, they become very depressed. They're almost suicidal. And in fact, there are a number of patients I know, they have tried to commit suicide when they want steroids.
Okay.
So it's but in some people, it has the opposite effect. People become more active, more alert, and more happier.
Yeah.
So we never know how they will react. So that's something that you need to be mindful of that. And also it increases the appetite. Steroids tend to cause people to become more hungry. So you will obviously eat more, and that may be a good effect. Perhaps the people who are professional bodybuilders do it because they can eat more. Because it increases the appetite.
More weight, more muscle.
Weight. So it might be helpful, but that comes with the price, obviously, But as I mentioned, the blood pressure and the diabetes.
Interesting. Are there any other tests, like organ tests, that people could do to check?
Yeah, you can check the blood pressure. You can check your kidney function, see whether what is happening. You can also check your blood sugar level, what we call a hemoglobin A1C. That monitors your blood sugar over a period of 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
Those are the type of things that you will do. But then, if you're overdoing it, the steroid can have an opposite effect on the muscle, what they call, you can get a muscle weakness. It's been well described. Steroid can cause proximal muscle weakness and pain. So it is
proximal meaning towards the head.
In a proximal meaning that I'm talking about the shoulder girdle and the pelvic girdle muscles, the deltoid, the quadriceps.
Okay.
Those things are proximal muscles. as opposed to distal muscle of the forearm or the lower leg.
Okay, got it.
So that can. So I think it's important people need to be aware of the fact steroid is a drug that has got potential side effects.
Of course.
And then you mentioned about the protein, how high protein, how that would have a negative effect. So we touched on that aspect. So if you have a high protein diet, when it reaches the large intestine, it is metabolized by our gut bacteria microbiome. Then some of those metabolites from the high protein is called short-chain fatty acids. They are beneficial. They found that this can be helpful to the body. But there are other metabolites like ammonia and sulfide, which is coming from the animal protein, that can be harmful. It can cause inflammation of the heart muscles. It can cause problem with the other organs as well. So, and also it affects the microbial flora of the bowel, because you tend to have a bacteria that tend to produce these harmful effects of the metabolites. So your microbial flora also changes, which is not so as what we would normally have a healthy flora.
Okay.
Does it make sense?
Yeah, so from what I understand, the short chain amino acids, if you have too much of it, it can cause exacerbation of
those are good.
More negative.
For the protein content, the metabolism to short chain fatty acids, they are beneficial.
Okay.
They are beneficial. The one which are not beneficial, harmful, are the sulfite and
the sulfite and ammonia. Apologies.
Those are the two things that come from the metabolism of the protein meat in the large intestine.
And that causes the negative or the bad microbiome.
Correct. And then you are getting more and more. And once you have more inflammation, it tends to make you feel more tired and more weak, and it affects your sleep pattern. So it can have a negative effect.
Okay.
So for a short term, I guess this diet perhaps may not have a long-term effect. But if you're using them for a period of months and years, then obviously that you probably will doing some form of harm to body at certain stage in your life.
Okay. And is there a hard and fast number in terms of like metrics to not go over in terms of the protein? Or is it just generally speaking, like, do you know anything in terms of that?
Yeah, I think what we say is the healthy balanced diet, macronutrients, which is a carbohydrate, protein and the fat, should be 1/3 each. Roughly, that's a guide. So we should have 1/3 of our diet should be carbohydrate, 1/3 protein and 1/3 fat.
Okay.
So, but if you're saying that, I don't know how much protein
like
body will
per kilograms of body weight. A lot of them are taking like 2.2.
Okay.
It's like a lot. So I think.
But do you think they are not taking enough carbohydrate and fat, so they take that as well?
No, they will take the carbohydrates and fats as well, because carbohydrates are very important, especially for energy levels and the fat as well. So for the most part, they will. It's just the pure quantity of the protein would be quite high in some cases.
Right.
But they will balance it out with the carbohydrates, and then the fat is usually a smaller percentage. Cool.
The other thing to say is, just briefly, that we've talked about the harmful effect of the protein metabolism, sulfite and ammonia, but those harmful metabolites are not seen with the plant protein. So if you are taking plant protein, perhaps if you need to take high protein, plant protein perhaps will have a more beneficial effect than the animal protein.
Okay, there you
go. That again shown by research, the amount of inflammatory chemicals released into the body is high with the animal protein.
Okay, interesting. So plant protein actually has less of the inflammatory.
Correct.
Cool, that makes sense. That actually leads on to my next question. I was going to ask you what your thoughts on the vegan diet is in comparison to an animal-based diet. What are your thoughts on this?
I think people say plant diet in general it is healthier, it is safer. Whether that you need to be fully on vegan diet, I don't know. But there are people who are vegetarians. They don't eat meat. They don't also have milk and egg and fish. So maybe they will be eating enough vegetable protein from the form of legumes and the nuts and the beans. But my thoughts on just vegan diet, I think it is not easy for people, but people who are following it, they think it is something which they enjoy it. But I don't see it as any...
They swear by it, don't they?
Yeah, I don't see it as any adverse effect, certainly. If someone is able to stick to it, I don't see how that can affect our body adversely. I would think it would be helpful because you would eat variety of those things and it will certainly increase your microbiome profile.
Okay. So with the vegan diet, obviously it's going to be a lot more difficult to get the short chain amino acids. So how do people supplement with this? And how do people get around this? And obviously it's probably more expensive as well, because you have to look a lot further. So how do people usually navigate around this?
True, that is very true. You're right. If you are a vegetarian, there are certain component is not there in vegetarian. For example, vitamin B12 is not there in people who are vegetarian. So they can become vitamin B12 deficient.
Okay.
So then obviously you have to supplement those vitamins. And with regards to the short chain amino acid, the essential amino acid, that is true. That may not be able to get it. But I have a feeling those type of diet, they may be able to convert to some essential amino acid. From the other amino acids, they may be able to have a good component of that.
Okay.
Instead of having as an already, which is in the right form in the animal protein. So there would be, body will find a way to try and get the relevant nutrients. But yes, B12 is something that we see people who are just vegetarian.
Okay. And what does B12 particularly help?
It's a very important vitamin, John, because it is important for producing hemoglobin. People can become anemic because for the bone marrow to produce red cells, you need vitamin B12. And then vitamin B12 is also important for the nerve function. The myelin sheath, where the nerve can to control or conduct the impulses from the brain to the periphery, that get affected. As a result, you get nerve damage, you get sensory, you're not being able to feel certain areas of lower limb, they get sensory loss. They can get irreversible damage to the spinal cord.
Yeah.
So B12 deficiency can be quite bad and serious.
Okay, so the people with, because I know multiple sclerosis affects the myelin sheath, the nerve, okay, what makes the nerve impulses run faster and conduct a lot more efficiently.
Yes.
Do people with multiple sclerosis, are they found to have low vitamin B12 usually?
No. I don't think multiple sclerosis is
it's completely different.
No, it's different. We don't know the cause, but there are a lot of theories. One is about a viral infection, but certainly not vitamin B12.
Of course.
Yeah.
Just thought it potentially might have had a connect. I thought it potentially might have had a connection.
But it's a good note. You're right.
Yeah.
But when someone coming with neurological symptoms, we always check vitamins that can cause problem.
There you go.
Very interesting, maybe it's probably worth mentioning for your audience. There is you probably heard about called legal high, or this a drug that people use on small canisters where you can buy on counter. Nitric oxide or laughing gas or legal high. That we have seen recently can cause damage to the spine through vitamin B12. What nitric oxide does is it make vitamin B12 unavailable to the body to use the vitamin B12. It causes deficiency of vitamin B12 function, not the level. You have enough vitamin B12 in the body, but it can do it function because nitric oxide tend to block it.
Oh, okay.
So as a result, there had been a number of cases, youngsters who've been using it regularly, been admitted with the weakness of the legs. They couldn't work, they couldn't move, they couldn't walk. So we have seen a couple of people in Kings Lane. And it's interestingly, one young girl came with said that I've been using nitric oxide for 8 months. I have got the symptoms. I can't feel. I've not been able to walk. It is due to nitric oxide. Can you check me over? And interestingly, the doctor didn't know there was an entity. So that is the reason I thought it's important to know. It is a drug that people use it now very commonly. You can buy it over the counter. Now government has made it illegal, and it is now
you can go to jail up to 3 years now, I believe, if you use it.
But it can cause,
or for selling.
if in high dose, if you use it, it can cause neurological problem.
There you go, doctor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
That was very enjoyable. I learned a lot. I think you gave a lot of knowledge that everyone will be able to implement and understand and use in their day-to-day life. So thank you for that conversation. If you enjoyed this video, everyone, leave a like down below. Comment down below also what parts you enjoyed as well. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Subscribe to the channel. Join the community. I'm going to be doing a lot more videos like this, a lot more podcasts with health professionals like Dr. Mathialagan. And I'm going to try to educate you guys moving forward. I really enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to more podcasts in the future as well. So thank you. And I'll meet you guys in the next video.